Hello and welcome to Real Chat with Kat, the podcast dedicated to igniting your entrepreneurial spirit and empowering you to conquer new horizons. In this podcast, we chat with inspiring entrepreneurs on their journey to success through some amazingly insightful and expansive conversations. These episodes thrive on thought-provoking chats where our guests fearlessly explore their path to success, sharing their experiences, failures, and triumphs. No topic is off limits as we deep dive into the talked about and not so talked about pieces it takes to build a business, overcome limiting beliefs, deal with personal struggles, and everything in between that shapes our lives and our businesses. I'm your host, Kat Polsonelli, creator and founder at The Lotus Effect, where we believe that success is not just about strategies and tactics, it's about cultivating a powerful mindset and creating customized business operations that align with you and your true purpose. Whether it's mastering time management, improving productivity, enhancing leadership skills, or simply fostering a growth-oriented mindset, we'll provide you with the tools and strategies to flourish in both your business and personal life. I'm so excited to have you join us today in this episode, so get ready to feel empowered and inspired as we learn together and from one another on how to rise above challenges, break through limitations, and unlock our full potential. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of Real Chat with Kat. I am so excited to have my guest here with me today, Miss Jaime Blair. So, Jaime, do us all a favor and please tell us who you are, what it is that you do, and what got you into this space.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me today. I've been so looking forward to talking to you. So I like to say that I help people talk about what they do to inspire a full body yes from their dream clients and get more referrals from everybody else. I mostly work with coaches, and they come to me when they struggle to talk about their work in a clear and compelling way that everyone understands and gets excited about. So they're frustrated by the lackluster response from prospective clients, and very importantly, the lack of referrals from their network. And this is rarely because they're bad communicators. It's because they're fuzzy and vague on their personal brand. And that's one thing, especially with coaches, you're so good at coaching. And so you go when you start coaching and like changing people's lives and doing all this stuff. And it's really easy to skip over those fundamental, personal brand identity pieces, which inform how you communicate and how you show up in the world intentionally. So I help the coaches solve this problem so they can feel clear and confident in their communications through private brand clarity coaching, website copywriting, and I have a couple of online courses. So depending on wherever they're stuck. And that's me today. And how I got here is I've been a website copywriter for 13 years. Over 13 years. But it really wasn't until about 2 years ago when I started my own weekly online networking group for female entrepreneurs that it really dawned on me that people didn't know, and especially coaches, didn't know how to articulate the transformations and the big breakthroughs that they were getting for their clients in a tangible way that people could understand and really wrap their head around. And so in absence of that, what happens is people tend to pile on what I call squishy transformational language, try to then describe the work. And that sounds like, we've all heard it and we've all said it. I empower women to live their best lives.
Yep.
And that hurts for 3 reasons. It hurts for a lot of reasons, but the top 3 are because no one really knows what that means. And it does a really big injustice to the brilliant work that you do. And second of all, no one really knows how to refer you for that. And thirdly, you sound like everybody else that is also struggling to communicate and says the same thing. So after observing this for quite some time, I decided that was my mission, is to help my people that I cared so much about by giving them the tools to be clear and compelling and engaging communicators, so then they can go forth and connect with the people who they're meant to serve and further their mission and grow thriving businesses. So that's where I am today.
And I love that so much because it's so funny that we're having this conversation right now, because this has been a topic over the last several weeks with my clients and another mastermind group that I'm in as well, is having this clarity around how you explain what it is that you do. Because you're right, I feel like it is so easy to pick out all the pretty words like empowerment and confidence and right, and we throw that around, and then when you think about it, like, it sounds amazing and you're like, that sounds so great when I say it. But you're right, on the other end, when you are having these networking calls, or say you're speaking with someone that maybe is not your client and you want to refer them somewhere else, there's a huge disconnect, because I think for some people, it's hard to define who it is that you need when you have such a generalized statement, right? Because you're like, well, I only like 500 people that are like that need confidence, that need empowerment, that need, right? So it's, I don't know. I would love your take on it, since this is your specialty. On like, what would you consider? Because, Chat GPT and all the AI things spit all these out, all these pretty things out for us. But in the same time, that can still keep things very generalized, especially if you don't know how to use it or take what's in it and then articulate it in your way to promote it.
Absolutely. And as far as the AI stuff goes, I mean, I am definitely not up on my AI, but I have tried to use it, because why not? And I cannot make it work for me to capture people's voices and capture people's uniqueness and their passion. I think that that's really something that that has to come from inside of you. And so, okay, so one of the big problems, and coaches hate niching down.
Oh, that word.
Yeah, everyone hates it. And I get that. And so I kind of, but it's so important. So I kind of turned it on its head, because when you're like, I can help everybody. And that's the thing. Like, I know my skills. This is my gift to the world. I can help everybody. But while yes, you can't have a good conversation with everybody. And so that's one of the things that I really work on with my clients is, if you had to put all your people in a room, what would you be talking about? Because you need to speak their language and you need to know the words they use so you can reflect it back to them. So then they can feel seen and feel heard and understood. And as a coach, that's how you build emotional connection and trust. Because someone's like, oh my God, you did this just for me. Like, yes, I feel seen. But if you're just talking about women, like I help everyone from teenagers to 80-year-olds, there's just so much nuance there that you're missing out on. You can help all those people and they can still come to you for other reasons, but to have those really great conversations that set you apart, I call it the golden thread. What is the golden thread that connects all of your people? Like, they don't have to be a hard niche or a target market or whatever. That helps if you have that. But like, what is the thing that they're all struggling with that you specialize in helping them with? And how can we speak to them on that level? And then from the other side of the coin, that's you talking to your clients. But I also think a lot about how to refer people. I love referring people. It's, I think it's one of the most important things you can do in your business. And so when I'm on a call, one of the things that I always ask people, if I'm not getting the clarity that I need to know how to refer them, is what am I listening for? If I have a friend who is going through something, what am I listening for her to say that triggers, ooh, you need to work with Debbie. Yes, absolutely. That's your person. And that always really gives people pause when they go to answer that question. And I was just talking to a coach an hour ago, and it reminded me of this. A lot of people think about their client relationships from within the coaching container, like what you're going through. But you need to step back and think about it from a marketing standpoint. Where were they and what were they thinking and saying before you got to them? And so being able to communicate that to the person listening helps them know, oh, okay, I know when someone says this. So an example, I was talking to a woman a while ago and she helps stressed out parents. And I was like, okay,
Everybody is
can't
stressed
refer
out.
every parent that I know to you. That just doesn't make sense. I was like, so how do I know what's the trigger? What is this stressed out mom saying that's going to let me know, oh, I need to send her to so-and-so. And she thought for a second, and she said, when they say, I'm yelling at my kids way too much, this isn't me, and there's something wrong here, I need help. And I was just, this was a while ago, but that impacted me. I was like, wow, what a great example. And I could see that moment and I could hear someone saying that. And even if I know, a bunch of other coaches, like I'm now connecting that with her. And so being able to have that moment, that thing that people can be listening for. So you have to kind of think about it from both angles when you're crafting what you say is, how to get your perspective people to self-identify, but how to make yourself so easily referable.
Yeah, I love that. And you know what? Like you said, it's not that you have to niche down to the point of like this little tiny dot, but it's interesting too, because if you think about it, when you become very clear on your message or how you want to relate to people, and I tell people this all the time, yes, people are buying the product or the service that you're offering, but essentially they're connecting with you, so they're buying you. And then whatever it is that you offer is the bonus to it, right? That helps solve the issue that they have. And what's interesting is when you lean in more in that direction, you actually have people that trickle in that are outside of what you generally deal with or talk about because they are still relating to you. So they're like, okay, could you help me with this? Could you possibly help me with that? Right. For instance, I have a friend that I met on LinkedIn, which I adore her. Excuse me. And her marketing, she does a lot of marketing, but she focuses on dads. She's really big on giving dads the space to be home with their family and what that looks like. And she's had moms reach out that are like, well, but can you help me? She's like, well, of course I can. It's just, that's the way that she markets it. So it's not that. I think a lot of people get stuck in that scarcity mindset of like, okay, but if I only say this one thing, it's going to give me like 2 people. Okay. There is like what, 8 billion people in the world. I promise you there is enough people to go around and everybody has an issue for something. But generally, you want to be able to connect with those people that align with who you are and what it is that you're teaching, because otherwise you're forcing yourself into a client relationship that is not going to benefit you. And essentially, it's not going to benefit the person that's paying you. And that to me is a huge waste of time and energy on both sides.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Like you just nailed such an important point, because that's the other layer of it is, who are you energetically aligned with? You aren't made to help every single person out there. And if you do, with that scarcity mindset, take on everybody, then you're going to have bad experiences. And when you have bad experiences, not because you're a bad coach or service provider, but they're just not the right fit for you, you're incompatible. Then that's also, that's just as powerful as people having good word of mouth. Then they're going to go out in the world and they're going to be like, yeah, I didn't really have a great experience. And that's doing you more harm than if you just didn't have them at all.
Yeah.
So I love that you brought that up, because there is so much nuance to it.
There is. And I think that sometimes comes back to boundaries as well, and setting those limitations of like, okay, I know who I want to work with. I know what kind of client is going to make me happy to where I know I can make them happy, and being okay with saying, hey, you know what? I would love to work with you. And I actually have someone that does something very similar. And I think that you two would jive so much more, right? Because essentially you're opening up that gateway as well to bring in more yes clients by saying, I would love to work with you, but I think, right, this person would be. And that's where I think the power of networking and having strategic referral partners is a great way to continue to build. We think that just because we have these networking calls or we meet with all these people, like, oh my gosh, I should be referring. No, you still have to have referral partners that one, can clearly define what that is they do, and two, that still aligns with you as well, so that you send people to them because you know it's their perfect client and they can do the same thing, versus spreading yourself so thin thinking that, oh, well, I've got to send this person to over here because, they sent someone to me. And right, like, I feel like there's that boundary. There's that people pleasing aspect as well, right? Where I'm like, but I need to give back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a great point with the strategic relationships. Like, you're not bound to refer every single person and but when you're clear and other people are clear and how to also extract that from people, and you build those relationships. And that's where the power of it comes in, because you also want to give good referrals. You don't want to refer someone to someone who sucks. But when you sacrifice an opportunity to put two people together that are better, then instead of having a questionable experience, you've now made two friends. You've now given two people a great experience, and they're going to be appreciative of that. And I also like what you said a minute ago about people buying you and really resonating with your personality. And that's another big thing that I work with my people on, is it drives me crazy, because we are so conditioned to, especially if you've got big energy, especially if you're a little bit like shiny or outgoing, to dim your lights and to play, to like be quiet or whatever, or not talk about any controversial opinions. But that's all the stuff that gets people to align with you. And I have so many people come to me and they say, my brand or my website doesn't feel like me. It doesn't represent me. It doesn't, like, I don't want to share it. And the work to dig out those pieces, like, how do you want to show up in the world? Who do you want to attract? Like, who do you want your super fans to be? Who do you want to like fall in love with? That's such a fun piece of it, because when you show up as yourself and you show up fully shiny, authentic, then people gravitate to that. And people are like, oh my gosh, you're my person. And the ones that aren't your people, they don't. And that is great. Just like you said, And so coming up with that, giving yourself permission to just be unapologetically yourself, I think, is one of the most important things you can do. And also having a perspective. Like, that's one of the things I love about your brand, is you've got such a firm perspective. You've got a great story, a mission. That is how I think about you. That is how I associate. And that's, and I want to connect you with people based on your spirit, based on who you are. I mean, what you do is also amazing, but that's the part that like tugs on us emotionally, is who are you? And so I think that's another piece of the puzzle that's just so important.
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you for that. But you're right though, because, and I noticed it too, when I started looking for my first coaches and people to help me in my business, that I went for those that I could relate to. I went to those that I knew they had been through some struggles, and I was like, okay, they're going to understand my story. They're going to be able to meet me on a very different, deeper level than someone else who maybe hasn't been through exactly what I've been through, right? We all have our own stories and our own things, but people connect with that. And that was something that I talk about a lot on the podcast as well. Is, that's one of the reasons why therapy didn't work for me. I could not create that connection. And because I could not create that connection, I didn't feel like the person that was trying to teach me and help me actually fully understood what I was going through, right? And so, especially in the coaching space, right, people gravitate toward those that they're like, oh, you've seen some crap, or, oh no, you've been through this and I have too. You're going to understand me. I think it takes away the fear of being judged, and it allows us to kind of let down the guard of that shame and guilt that can get stuck so high that we decide not to reach out altogether because of that. And so I appreciate that, because I do want that to stand out. And those are the people that I want to connect with, right? Because I personally know what it is like to feel judged and feel ashamed that people are not going to understand. And if those are the kinds of people that come to me, I open my arms because I get to now offer the space that I wish I would have had. And I know that that is going to connect. And that is how you make transformational changes in people's lives.
Yes. Yes, yes. And so many people that are in the business of making transformational changes in people's lives are coming from a place of what they've overcome. Mm-hmm. So if you don't bring that out, if you don't share that, and it doesn't have to be, like nitty gritty, but if you don't share like, hey, this is where I'm from, this is my viewpoint, this is my perspective, this is, what I've overcome, then those people who you are the most inclined to, serve and make their lives better aren't going to find you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So if anybody heard that, being yourself, it's actually kind of great.
Yeah, right. It's awesome. There's someone that's going to love you no matter what.
And it's also so less exhausting. It's so less exhausting.
It is. And it is so less exhausting, especially when we are all worried about being judged, because nobody is going to love us all the time. People are going to not like you. And when you're putting yourself out there, when you're marketing yourself, when you're writing emails, when you're posting on social, I wish, and I'm glad when the people who don't want to read my emails, when they unsubscribe, because it's like nice, because I know that they're out of my world now. They're not going to be judging. They're gone. And then new people that could be like, oh, I love what you have to say. It resonates with me. They can feel my energy. And then I can feel safe expressing myself because I know that I've, fostered a container of people that, want to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I know that you were going to say something else unless I stole your idea or I completely sidetracked you, but it's okay. If so, we'll come back to that.
Well, one, I just wanted to say in the whole idea of talking about what you do in personal branding stuff, I think about it in 4 ways. I think about your people, think about, your perspective, your personality. But the one thing that I didn't want to leave out is, and it's probably one of the biggest, is what problem do you solve? And that is something that I think everybody needs to be able to answer just like that. What problem does your business solve? Because again, it's like knowing who your people are and having that conversation. When you know what your problem is, then you can look back at your people. You're like, okay, what are they thinking about around this problem? What is that language they're using? How can I talk about? Yes, you can solve all the problems, and maybe you do, but what's that thing that you want to be known for? What's that thing that you want to be famous for? It's that problem that you solve. So I think that's even when it comes to people identifying and people being able to refer you, having it so clear, hey, people come to me when they're having this problem and this is what I solve. And so I just didn't want to gloss over the big problem solving, because all the other things I think kind of dance around that big, because that is what you do. The rest is who you do it for, how you show up. But the problem is what people are actually going to exchange money with you for. They want the solution to that problem. And everything else sort of draws them in. But you have to know what that thing is that they're buying to be able to sell your services.
Definitely. Now, how would you suggest to people how to define that? Because I've seen people that talk about all the problems that they solve, and they go from A all the way to Z and all of the in-betweens. And I think that sometimes that can get lost in people understanding, because they're like, wait, I thought that but you do. So what are we, what? Exactly, and I know I did that for a while as well. Right. But I would love your take on helping someone define that problem, because it's so easy for us to give the solution and say I can help you feel better. I can help you be more confident in yourself. Okay. That's not necessarily the problem though. So how do you pull that out to be able to explain that a little bit more specifically?
So that's a good question. So I think how you pull that out is you assess you look at what you do, you look at who you're helping, and you really understand. And maybe it's by asking your current clients, or it's by asking your, maybe if you don't have a ton of current clients, your ideal clients, your people who would be great, ask them what problem they're actively looking to solve. Like, okay, I'll just use myself as an example here, is I do a lot of stuff. I do, brand clarity coaching, which people don't even necessarily know what that means. I don't really know a better way to say it. I do website copywriting. I do like networking stuff. Like I do all this stuff. When I'm looking at like, okay, I'm looking at my pool of people here. I'm looking at the people I'm surrounded by who I want to help. What is the thing that I'm witnessing them struggling with that is hurting them the most? What is the thing that they keep saying to me, like, oh, I can't do this, and it's hurting me because of that? And so that is how I personally came across the like how to talk about what you do, just very simply, because that is the thing that I was hearing people say. I don't know how to talk about what I do to make people understand. I don't know how to talk about what I do to do this. So that's how I think it's a lot of thinking. You have to think about who you're talking. You have to think about the clients. And it's not so much what you want to do. I mean, it is what you want to do, but it's not so much, oh, but I want to be as broad as possible. It's picking that thing that is the most appealing. Like, what is the problem your people most want solved? Because you're still going to be able to help them with all the other stuff. Once you get them in your world, then they'll say, like you said, well, can you help me with this? Or can you help me with this as well? I mean, you can have clients for years. It never ends. But what is that thing that your people are talking about that they're struggling with? So, trying to think of a good example off the top of my head. I was just in a networking group, so I just heard a bunch of people say a bunch of different things. Okay, so but this woman who stuck out in my head, she is a period and productivity coach. And I was like, and she did a bunch of other stuff. Right? She did a bunch of other stuff. She did a lot of operational stuff, a lot of strategy stuff like that. But she led with a period of productivity. And I was like, okay, first of all, like that's a niche, like, right. So I'm now immediately curious. But the problem that her people had that she kind of honed in on is they were down on themselves because of the inconsistency of the rhythms of their work. So I'm super creative. Next week, I feel like a lump on a log, and she was hearing people struggling with this confusion of, I can't be as productive as I need to be. And it was really hurting their self-esteem, but that like, why can't I be more productive? And so she looks at it through a lens of your menstrual cycle. And so that was the problem that she was solving, is her people not being able to live up to their fullest potential because they couldn't have consistent productivity. So that would be an example of a problem that she solved.
I love that. Yeah, no, that is that's fantastic. That's awesome as well. I'm just saying, that's so niche down, but that is so cool. Okay. Sorry. Geek out moment, everybody. So
all the other things, but now I'm talking to you about her, so that's the power of, having that uniqueness, or that of the things you do. Maybe you do something a little bit more general, but what is that thing, that little kernel that's going to stick in people's heads, that's going to make them talk about you when you leave?
Yeah. No, I love that, because, I talk about that all the time, about simplifying your business and your personal life down, like how to prioritize, how to be able to breathe from your day to day. And right, that wraps into the time management that I do, the productivities that I do, personal development, leadership, right? Like all that kind of wraps in. But those to me are like, those are the added bonuses. What I help with is to help people just after they've been like, I have all the systems, I have all the things, and I have no clue what I'm doing, and I'm going in a circle. So you're right. I love that, because I had that issue for a really long time of trying to explain everything that it was that I did. Right. And then it felt like this like 5 minute segment of going through and explaining your business. And you don't always have that opportunity, right? Especially if you're doing networking calls, or if you're in people's masterminds, or you're doing small summits and stuff, and they're like, well, tell us a little bit about you. You generally have like 2 minutes, right? Like tops. Like, so
That's max.
yeah. Yeah. So being able to really kind of hone in on and give, like you said, that main specific really helps, because then you can continue to elaborate on it by giving feedback. If you're teaching at a summit, they're going to learn that you do more than that, right? Once you start getting into the details, but we don't always have the time, and people don't always have the capacity to listen for that long, right? They catch like the first 30 seconds and they're like, oh, you do this. And you're like, but I said all those other things. You didn't catch any of that. Yeah, no, it's our attention span is not there. So you really have to be able to give something, like you said, that's going to click in their brain and be like, oh, okay. And then you can elaborate later. Or like what I do when you meet with somebody one-to-one, then you really start diving in and saying, okay, I see what's going on. However, it looks like you also need this, this, and this, which I can help with that as well. And then you can build something around them, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you just have to pick. You just have to pick a thing. Like, with my like how to talk about what you do. That's really just like a pretty little umbrella for, personal brand stuff. But not everyone knows what personal branding means,
Yeah.
or messaging or stuff like that. So if I start leading with that, people are like, some people do, but a lot of people don't. But everybody knows what it means to talk about what you do. But, so you come up with something that is a nice umbrella for something that people can remember. And then you can get into the nuances. Then it can unfold into all the great stuff. But you have to put it in a container, or you have to pick something, because people don't have the bandwidth. And
Yeah.
it's not stifling your creativity. It's not putting you in a box. It's simply people, especially in a networking setting, you know, especially in a networking setting where it's not breakout rooms, where it's like you've got
Mm-hmm.
40 people and everyone's got 30 seconds.
Yeah.
No one's hearing you, and everyone's waiting for their turn. And I will
Yeah.
give a tip for networking stuff. One of the things that I do is I have a little cheat sheet, and I have introductions, because obviously I can talk about what I do, but sometimes you're not always on your A game, like
Yeah.
sometimes you're not feeling it, you're tired, you're not really focusing. So I have introductions. I have a 2 minute, a 90-second, a 60-second, and a 30-second, all written out. And I have
Nice.
on a little text note that could be right there. So if I'm going to someplace new that I've never been, and they're like, okay, 30 seconds, and I only have my 2 minute one, or I'm just winging it. And that's another thing. Even if you are super good about talking about what you do, you're dialed in, you're practiced. If you go into a situation where they give you a time limit that's unfamiliar to you, then you still, like, it's really hard in the spur of the moment to condense everything that you have prepared into a fraction of that time.
Yeah.
So I like to have a little bit of everything. So if I am surprised, or if I'm just not on my A game, or I'm just not there, just have it down so I can, like, scoot it up to the top of my screen and just be like, oh yeah. So that's one of my little talk about what you do tricks.
I love that. But you know what? That makes so much sense. And I've had a lot of people, we've talked about this before, for us speakers, same thing, right? If you have something you want to talk about, or you generally talk about, you need to be able to segment that out, because depending on the summit that you're at, or the conference that you're on, or whatever is going on, you may not have the full 30 minutes to elaborate across the whole thing. So where are the highlighted points, and how do you condense it down, right? That way, if you don't have the time, you can still get part of it out to where people can concisely understand, and you leave almost like that room for mystery, right? Where they're like, "Ooh, I'm kind of intrigued. Like, I want to learn more."
Right. Absolutely. And this all goes back to just it being prepared and doing these things with intention. And especially, I'm super passionate about networking. And that is one of the things that I talk a lot about when I'm teaching people about networking is it's not, if it's just a crapshoot, then you're so wasting your time. You need to do it with intention, like show up prepared, educated on the person you're talking to or the event that you're at, with knowing what you're going to say, knowing how you're going to follow up. But that idea of just being very prepared and showing up like a professional that knows what they're doing instead of just like, oh, I'm just coming to this coffee chat for fun. Because no one has time for fun coffee chats if you're busy. They're like, okay, this is part of my marketing, it's part of my network. Like, here's my thing that I'm doing. So show up like you mean it. And that, I think, when you show up on a call with someone and they're just like, oh, so I don't know anything about you. You're like, really? Like nothing? Like you couldn't take seconds to like look at my LinkedIn before we got on this call? Okay, fine. But, little things like that, just showing up, just prepared and strategic and intentional. A little bit of being intentional in all of this communication goes a really long way. And a long way how you show up and a long way of how you're perceived.
Yeah, definitely. And I love that so much too. And, I've had the privilege of being a part of her networking, and it's so much fun to, especially when you're in a group setting like that and other people who have been there before kind of have that same vibe and that same understanding, because then your conversations can elevate so much quicker in such a short amount of time. And then you can figure out within those few minutes, like, oh, I want to continue this conversation, or, oh, you think you'd be great for my podcast, or, oh, I think I already have someone I can introduce you to, right? Like that to me is the difference between ground level and everybody's kind of beginning and we're all trying to figure it out, to now we're at a higher level where it's like, okay, I know what I want. I know what I do. I know I can help you. And I still have space for you to be able to tell me, and I can intake that information because I've created that clarity for myself.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And exactly. And then it's just a better experience for everybody, because everyone's on the same page. And yeah, if everyone's clear and everyone communicates in a way that, because, we want to help each other. And we were talking a little bit before we started about, the idea of pitching versus building relationships. And I think that in networking, there doesn't have to be a hard line. You can, when you show up prepared, you show up consistently, and you know what you're about, then it takes the pressure off. And you can say, hey, I'm so excited about my thing. And that's also the enthusiasm that you put behind it, I think, is also really important. So when you show up to talk about your work, and it is kind of, a 2-minute introduction, which is a pitch. If you love what you do and you love the people you serve and you're so excited about it and you're so clear about it, then it doesn't feel like a pitch. It's just like, oh my God, I do this thing. Here's what I do. If you know anyone that needs this, I would love to help them. If you need this, let's talk. Like I'm so jazzed about this. Like, this is my calling. This is my mission. And then people respond to that energy. So it doesn't, and I think that the whole idea of pitching kind of puts this weird energy on you, so then you feel like, oh, well, now I'm being weird and I'm being manipulative and salesy. And instead, like, you can, like, we have to sell our things. Like, we're not in business if we're not, like, exchanging our services for some sort of monetary reward. So be excited about it. Be like, yes, I have this thing. I'm so excited. I could totally help you. Yay. And then, because what if I need you? Or what if I know, oh my God, my sister needs you so bad. Or, oh, my best friend, someone, like, if we just approach it with a little bit more fun and intention, I think it doesn't have to be like, ooh, that's a hard sell. I want to know, like, you're spending your time to come to my networking group. I want to know how I can help you. Like, we'll still be friends. We're probably going to be anyway, but because you can, especially women can tell who they like, and, women vibe with each other very, very quickly. And you can do both. Like, let's figure out how to support each other as best as possible and stop looking at it like, ooh, it's a pitch fest, or ooh, it's sales. Like, no, it's helping each other out, because we all have these amazing gifts to give. So let's give them, It doesn't have to be a taboo thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that that comes out in the passion and the confidence that you have in what it is that you do and what you offer as well, right? Like I've come into conversations before and it's like super high vibe and we're both excited and then I get to tell my side and I'm just like I am so in love with what it is that I do and sharing it, and it's such a passion of mine. It comes out as a passion and it comes across very confidently, right? And I've had people that are like, I could probably use your help. And I'm like, I am always open to setting up a call and having that conversation, right? I leave it very open ended. And then it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like that, like you said, that icky kind of hard sell. But you're right. Like people will, you can figure out who you like and who you vibe with based on how they come into a conversation. And that's, I mean, that's that's one of my favorite things about the podcast is, every person that I meet with before I have them on the podcast, I get to tell their energy. And then I'm like, oh yeah, you're totally going to be on the podcast. This is going to be awesome. Right. But you can feel that. And then that energy is then generated so organically that those that do connect are like, yeah, I could use that. Or I actually know someone that's very close to me that I know could use that. And then it just becomes this natural progression of introductions to other people versus feeling like you owe someone else something.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And what you just said about showing up with passion and confidence, that is exactly it. And you get that confidence from the clarity. Like if there's one takeaway from anything I ever have to say, it's that showing up confident and showing up with your enthusiasm and your passion is what attracts people to you. But you can't have that confidence if you don't have a center. You don't have a platform that you can stand on that is unshakable. Like, this is my thing. Like, I know, like, you can throw a million questions at me. This is my thing. I know it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but you only get that when you've done the work to figure it out, to just
Yeah.
put the pieces together and understand all these parts. And then you can feel bulletproof, like and that's where you get that confidence. And when you have that confidence, then your passion can just unleash because you know what you're doing and you know what you're saying, and you don't have to be freaking out like, well, and there's not that scarcity, like, oh, but I do this and this and this and this. You're like,
Yeah.
no, this is what I do. This is who I help. And I love it. And it's my thing.
Yep. Yeah. Bam, mic drop. We're going to end it right there. No,
Perfect.
end of the conversation. No, but as we come to a close, I know, right? I'm like, we could go for round two. As we come to a close, one of the things I always love to ask my guests is, do you happen to have, and you've given so much great advice, but do you happen to have a quote or another piece of advice that you'd love to leave the audience with?
You know what? I think I'm going to let you down with the quote here, but I think that for me, just kind of what I was just saying, that confidence isn't something that you are born with or that you just get. Comes from having that clarity and from putting yourself out there over and over and over again and experimenting and trying and understanding who you are. That like depth of understanding who you are and what you do is what builds that confidence, and that confidence is what we all want, right?
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
what everyone goes for, is how do I feel confident when I show up in a room? So I think that would be the last thing that I would lean on.
I love that. Well, before we go, please share with everybody, how can they connect with you? How can they find you? How can they be in your world? And especially your networking group, share that one as well.
Is called Goldilocks Networking. And it is every week on Wednesdays, depending on where your time is, it's 10 a.m. Eastern. And the best way to find any of that is to go to my website, which is Jaime Blair, Jaime Blair, BLAIR.com. And you can find the networking group and all my other stuff. But that's the best way to connect, because it's so fun. I'm also on LinkedIn, not so much on Instagram. I'm not social media person. All of my entire business is built on referrals and relationships. So
Mhm.
that's another reason why I'm so passionate about this. But yes, everyone come to Goldilocks Networking. It's fun. And that's what I would recommend.
Yay! Yeah, of course. And we'll have all that information in the show notes so you guys can get on her website, hop in her networking as well. And of course, you can find her on LinkedIn if you guys are looking to connect that way. But Jaime, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast and sharing all of these amazing tips and everything and the great conversation.
Yes, it's been so much fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. And to everybody else out there, I hope you guys were taking notes because boy, were there some mind blow moments. So, and of course, reach out to Jaime if you have any questions, or if you're looking for clarity in your business. And don't forget, until next time, do one thing positive for someone each and every day and see the difference that it makes in your life. So until next time, have a fantastic day. Hello again, and thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today. If you enjoyed this episode and it brought tons of value, we ask that you please share, like, and subscribe. Your support means the world to us and helps us to reach even more inspiring entrepreneurs who can benefit from these powerful conversations. If you haven't already, be sure to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform, as this feedback is an amazing gift that fuels our growth and helps us to continually improve this podcast. Looking for an extra dose of inspiration and empowerment? Then be sure to connect with me on social media. You can find me at The Lotus Effect, where I share valuable resources and tips while sharing my own journey of being an entrepreneur. And if you're interested in learning more about my coaching programs and services, be sure to check out my website at the-lotus-effect.com. Once again, thank you so much for being a part of Real Chat with Kat. Your presence and support makes all the difference. Remember, whether you find yourself in the depths of the mud or on the path of growth, we all have a unique journey. And just like the lotus, some of us start in the dirtiest of mud, yet as we rise and grow, we blossom into something beautiful, unique, and truly one of a kind. To all of my visionaries out there, keep rising and growing as you create your own Lotus Effect.